Hi everyone, I'm Urvashi. I think we're waiting for Shekhar and Jose to join us and green light from the Ideas for Goa team. I can just briefly introduce myself also. Like I was saying to you earlier, I run something called Tandem Research. We're a small think tank that was set up 3 years ago. And we work at the interface of technology, society, and sustainability. So a lot of our current work is looking at, now we're obviously focused on COVID, but we have a big future of work and learning program. And within that, we look at the impact of new digital technologies and how they're recasting ways of working, employment relations, automation, and job displacement, skills, etc. So we work also with governments. Recently, we worked with Niti Aayog to put together their skilling strategy for an AI talent pool. And then we also do a fair amount of work on AI, on artificial intelligence, on the ethics and governance of it, around data governance. I've been a part of Niti Aayog's Frontier Technology Commission. And then we also have a climate and sustainability program where we look at the future of cities, we look at resilience of communities to climate variability. And we've recently set up in Panjim actually with the Smart City Corporation with a grant from the Danish government, or about to set up something called an urban living lab in Panjim. And the idea is that it would be a site for kind of community engagement, participation, and experimentation. So yeah, so that's me, and it's really great to connect with all of you. I think one of the difficulties we've had so far as a new think tank is we've been very busy setting up and still to build stronger linkages within the community. So I'm really glad and privileged to connect with all of you and to be part of this discussion.
Yes.
Boards, we want to put a few boards with regards to this maintaining social distancing and all. So few suggested 10 places we've identified in the city of Panjim. And
So put no.
yeah, but then what is about the charges?
I told you.
So maybe before people start signing in, etc., just a few kind of housekeeping rules. So if you're the one, if you're speaking, the mic will go, the camera will go on you, and your screen will be enlarged, and that's what everyone else will see. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other is, if you are speaking, if you're not speaking, please do keep your mic on mute, because otherwise there's a lot of echo. And if your mic is on mute, then it won't go to your face, essentially.
Yes.
And how we'll do this is I'll give a brief introduction, and after which I'll turn to all of you. I'll introduce each of you, and then maybe we can have opening remarks from all of you for about 5 to 8 minutes. And because we have 4 panelists, and there's, I'm sure, a lot to talk about, I will kind of prod you after maybe 5 minutes to say that, can we start winding up, just so that we have enough time for audience discussion, interaction, etc. So we'll do 1 or 2 rounds of questions with all of you, and then we'll open it up to the audience for their questions. Great. So I think that's everyone, and we can start. So
sorry, I had no problem joining in.
No problem, not a worry. So we'll start now. I think we already have quite a few people in the audience. I'm seeing almost over 40 participants. So I think that's a good number to start with, and maybe some more will join us in a few minutes. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of webinars on Ideas for Goa. I hope you all are staying safe and sane in these pretty perplexing times. I'm sure most of you are aware, but just very briefly, the Ideas for Goa is a citizen initiative to reignite Goa's economic engine in a post-COVID world. And the idea is that there's this platform, www.ideasforgoa, please go check it out. And the idea is that citizens, various stakeholders can propose particular ideas or suggestions for how we can rebuild Goa and rebuild better in some sense, right? Post-COVID. And the idea is that based on the votes that every idea receives, the top 100 ideas will be published and shared with the broader public, government, and potential implementation agencies. So this was launched earlier this month, and it's quite remarkable the number of suggestions and ideas we already see up on the platform. I was quite pleasantly surprised when I did go to the website, and also the level of detail and the amount of thought that has gone into some of these proposals, I think gives us a great cause for kind of celebration in our community and hope for going forward. So maybe just a few remarks from me, and then I'll turn to our speakers. So I think we all recognize that we're all very privileged to be here in Goa. There's very few cases. There's a great sense of community and just the ability to be out in nature and to enjoy some of the basic good things of life. And that's what makes an initiative like this so important. But one of the things that really strikes me about the current COVID crisis is really the need for system thinking, or the need to kind of go think beyond the immediate effects to second order and third order effects beyond the public health crisis. So, some people have been calling this the black swan event, but this is really not a black swan event. There was a lot of signals, there were a lot of warning, but in some sense the society as a whole, we didn't pay enough attention to it. And we didn't think about what the ripple effects of this virus could be. So when we think about how we want to reignite Goa's economic engine, I think we really need to think about not just how we reignite it, but what kind of economic engine we want and what could be the unintended spillover effects and how do we anticipate or manage those at an early stage, right? So how do we anticipate it? How do we build back better? How do we build back stronger? How do we build back in a way that is inclusive, that is sustainable, that is just, that is equitable? And this is a great opportunity to do so. So I want to thank the Ideas for Goa team for taking this great initiative, for bringing us all together. And really, in some sense, making the most of all our lockdown, that, we can all now apply ourselves to some serious constructive thinking about what the future of Goa could be. So let me very quickly introduce the speakers. So we have Mr. Sanjeev Rodriguez, who is a senior official of the Goa administration and an ex-officio joint secretary and ex-CEO of the Entertainment Society of Goa. And he's currently serving as the project director of the District Rural Development Agency. Mr. Rodriguez has also worked in the CCP for over a decade and was transferred out in May 2016 after 4 years, and he's now returned as the head commissioner of the City of Corporation of Panjim. We then have Dean De Cruz. Dean De Cruz has been in Goa for a long while, working earlier with the architect Gerhard de Puna, and then decided to stay on. And in 1986, he became a partner in a firm called Natural Architecture, which was working on cost-effective housing. And he now is the principal architect of Dean De Cruz and Associates. In 2001, he also co-founded something called Mosaic, which is about interdisciplinary collaboration. And he's also been part of the state level committee for the making of the regional plan 2021 for Goa. We also have Mr. Shekhar Sardesai. Shekhar is the vice chairman and managing director of Kyneco Limited, which is an enterprise engaged in the manufacturing of composites for diverse markets such as aerospace, defense, mass transit, industrial and telecom. And he's been widely acknowledged as one of the finest successes of Goa's first generation of entrepreneurs. And then we have Mr. Jose Manuel Noronha, who is the chairman for the Goa Public Service Commission and Goa State Innovation Council. He's also on the National Committee on the Model Rules of Procedure for State Public Service Commissions and the Technical Evaluation Committee for Goa Solid Waste Management Corporation, as well as the former chairman and program advisor for the Ministry of Science and Technology with the Government of India. And before I turn over to the panelists for their opening remarks, just a few kind of housekeeping rules. I'd request you all to keep your mobiles on silent. That rule hasn't changed, whether we're in COVID or pre-COVID. If you are not speaking, please also keep your mic on mute so that there is no echo. If you are an audience member and you would like to pose a question, there is a Q&A box at the bottom that you'll be able to see. So you can type in your questions over there. And towards the end of, after about 1 or 2 rounds of questions with the speakers, we'll turn to the audience and take a bunch of questions together. Right? And for the panelists, maybe if you could limit your opening remarks to maybe 5 to 8 minutes so that we have enough time for conversation. Sanjeev, maybe I'll start with you. So what in your view is some of the most important steps that we need to take, not just as government, but as a society towards a kind of medium to long-term recovery in Goa? I mean, in particular, I think it would be interesting if you could reflect on, issues of sustainability. How do we build that self-sustainability in our communities, whether it's at the level of local enterprise or agriculture? What are the steps that we can start taking, and what is the broader vision that we should be aspiring for?
Yeah, it's a good time to reboot ourselves and work on certain measures which can bring about sustainability at grassroots.
Sorry, Sanjeev, can I ask you to speak up a little bit? I think your voice is getting a little muted.
Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now? Okay. So I think it is a good time to reboot and have certain thought processes implemented, especially in self-sustainability at grassroots level. Since you have asked me to talk about how local grassroots enterprise can be furthered or can be revived, local grassroots agriculture and farming processes, agrarian past glory of Goa can be revived. I think it's a great opportunity to do so. One of the things which came as a first shock after COVID and the lockdown was declared was everyone became aware that Goa was not self-sustaining and not sufficiently producing enough of vegetables. We are dependent on neighboring states and shortages and all such things were the order of the day. A great opportunity to revive the grand old agrarian local system in Goa, and I think it's great to have a strategy in place where we can work with local communities to revive their cultural systems which were prevalent for ages. Secondly, local enterprise. I think local artisanship, local enterprise, which was thriving earlier, for good or for bad, has changed course. Opportunities have driven past Goans, and local traditions, local enterprise, which was thriving and which was making our communities self-reliant, have died down. People have moved to urban areas. People have moved abroad, and have sort of given rise to a situation where these local enterprise and local initiative, local self-employed systems have cracked and have fallen apart. As far as your point on agriculture is concerned, I think we need to build confidence among the local agrarian workers and the local village communities that yes, they can grow and that there would be takers. I think that confidence deficit is definitely there in local agrarian community. This deficit has to be filled and this deficit has to be overcome. I'll give you an example. There is milk production in the state, and the milk farmer does not go very far to sell his milk. So there is the milk cooperative, which the truck passes through every village which wants to give milk to the cooperative, whether it is Goa Dairy or Amul, and you can come to the village point and keep your milk and they will take. This is a big confidence booster that your product can be sold at your doorstep. I think it's a model which works. It's a model which has worked in Goa. And if you have that initiative, your product can be sold. I think this initiative should be translated to agriculture. and we have to do door-to-door pickup. We have to have this confidence booster. We talk about purchase agreements in all spheres, in all sectors. You have PPA, which means power purchase agreement. We have a power purchase agreement where power sector is concerned. Some other agreements. Can we convert this into a produce purchase agreement? And can we build this confidence and say, yes, this is the agreement which we have with the local community. This is the agreement which we have with the I think we need to think of the producer at the lowest grassroots level and have this confidence building agreement with them and work with a system wherein this would come. Naturally, this would have a multiplier effect. People would start growing more because the takers are more. People will start growing more because the produce is being purchased at his doorstep, and people will then produce what is required. This will take a lot of time, effort, energy, but it will work towards long-term sustainability and long-term self-reliant society status for Goa. In your second aspect, when you have talked about local enterprise, I'll again talk about examples and how in this COVID situation we thought of at the Panjim Municipal Corporation. It's a very small example, but I think we could work on these lines. You know, while sweeping the road, we used to sweep the roads with brooms. They are, of course, those brooms, and you get them wholesale bulk. They have a plastic handle, and they are those coconut rib brooms. And these are got into Goa, and all, whether it is a five-star hotel sweeping its lawns, whether a housewife sweeping, or the Panjim Municipal Corporation sweeping, we used to use this broom. We have tweaked a little since I work with self-help groups. We thought that we would promote self-help group brooms. So we have the Goan broom. I'll show it to you. So it has a handle like this. This is the Goan broom, which has no taker. The one with the plastic handle, which you buy from your supermarket, has got takers. We have decided to now only buy these brooms. And we need some 5,000 to 10,000 of these brooms every year. So if the Panjim Municipal Corporation, we have already decided that we will grow, we have got these self-help groups, we have reversed the pressure on them. The pressure on them was that this local enterprise was dying because they were starved of the market. Now, in advance, I'm placing an order of 2,000 brooms. They are scurrying to find this raw material. They are trying to make this raw material and trying to make this broom, and I have reversed the pressure on them. The pressure is now to sit at their home and make the broom rather than come to the market. So 2,000 brooms are already ordered. They cannot deliver. We have to reverse pressure on each such item. I'll give you another example. We used to collect in a plastic gamela, and we used to collect mud or whatever and load it in plastic gamela. During this COVID, we have taken a decision and said we will not use plastic gamelas, we will use cane baskets. And I've got a sample of a cane basket. This is a cane basket which we will use in Panjim henceforth. We have already ordered 5,000 such cane baskets. We have reversed pressure on the self-help group. They were trying to sell this cane baskets and they were selling some 500 to 1,000 baskets. We have ordered 3,000 baskets. They cannot deliver. The pressure is on them. They are now sitting at their doorstep just sourcing this material and trying to, the order is already on them. Every such item has to be identified, local enterprise has to be encouraged, everyone has to work on such small local enterprises and make every village, every community, every art sustainable at their doorstep. We had long handle brooms. All long handle brooms were market and supermarket sourced. Local long handle broom people died a natural death. During this situation, we have made an analysis and I have worked on two such things. I'll show you an example. This is an example of a long handle broom available in the market. It has plastic, it has rubber, and this is mass made and this is available. We have given a small training to self-help groups and told them to make a similar one at home. And we could order and we'll start sweeping the entire city with this. So our local broom comes like this. They have fire, they have palm frond, and now every palm frond is valuable because I'm buying from them in thousands.
Yeah.
So I think every such item has to be listed, and we have a list of such items where we can promote this local enterprise. We will make people live in their homes. We will, and that would be their self-containment. We don't need COVID containment. We need enterprise containment.
Right.
And we will do this enterprise containment and we will make this enterprise work from home. This is the effort we have to put in. And this is simple, small thinking, small ideas, small initiatives, and a large commitment. It requires a large-hearted commitment to work with these local communities. We have worked with these self-help groups. These self-help groups are going to now work, and you know, these are small examples I have worked on, but I think.
Yeah, so local ecosystems, local production, local agriculture. Yeah, and I think self-reliance is key. Shekhar, maybe this is a good time to draw you into this conversation. I mean, what are some of the challenges that businesses face, right? I mean, in terms of the ease of doing business, access to markets, access to finance, to make this a reality, to make this kind of local self-reliance a reality, or more broadly, if we are to kind of, you know, give a leg up to the startup ecosystem, what are the kind of instruments, what are the kind of capacities that we need? Shekhar, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute your mic.
I said, a good question, Urvashi. I will start with a little macro level understanding of Goan economy, and you know how. So what I would say is, in the last many years, Goan economy has actually been an accidental economy, and for many years, you know. And if you look at two major sectors which contributed significantly to the economy, mining and tourism, both the sectors have been exploited, and exploited in a bad sense, you know, in some way. This is a time for us to really get back to the drawing board and reboot ourselves in terms of policy. I think we need to go. These sectors really hold promises for the state in the future. Definitely, they cannot be set aside, but we need to reboot. We need to readjust and recorrect on a policy front to make sure that the economy that we derive for tomorrow from this sector is not accidental, but deliberate. One such attempt was made in 2014. I'm sure Sanjeet is fully aware of this, and many of you. As the industry, we worked with the government, and I was actively involved in the group which authored the Goa investment policy and then created the Goa Investment Promotion Board. If somebody goes into this policy, you will find a lot of deliberate policy advocacy that was authored in this policy. But for some reason, that policy and the board lost its way. Every one of the stakeholders have to be blamed for it. I think we can go back to the drawing board with the same policy, make course corrections. That policy looked at sectors which were, you know, we laid down certain principles on which the policy was based, because it was grounds up. First was, you know, we have land as a very scarce resource in Goa, and we need to create employment for Goans. So we said, first, the sectors will include those which generate maximum employment per square meter, and the second was maximum revenue per square meter. Then we looked at those sectors. We said those sectors should be create high-paying jobs. And these were some of the priority sectors that we zeroed on to and said, these are the sectors government should encourage in terms of bringing in investment in Goa and make our investment and industrial development a deliberate policy-driven initiative rather than an accidental one. So as a result, we said sectors like biotech, sectors like education, sectors like startup and IT, not in the IT in the sense of how it's happening in Bangalore, but research and development centers, educational hubs, aerospace and defense, and many other sectors, high-end engineering, which created high value-added employment, which is specific to the Goans. So this is as far as I think medium to long term, we need to make this correction, and nothing like the COVID crisis that we have got time to pause. We look at once again what mistakes we did in the past, go back to the drawing board and re-engineer our policy as a deliberate policy for the future. But in the short run, I think with whatever we have, in the short term, the one thing that we need to do is, instill animal instinct, again, animal spirit in our enterprise. And to do that, I think first and foremost, we need to create that ease of doing business, which has never existed. All the ratings that we are saying about ease of doing business are to a very large extent really not being able to be enjoyed by the industry. Remove a lot of regulations, remove a lot of policy bottlenecks which are not required. Some of them are very, very old, and some of them are actually deterrent to industry. They are not enabling industry. They are only creating unnecessary deterrent. This is the time to let loose the industry. They need space. They need the space for maneuvering. They need space to, get the traction back. And I'm sure if this inertia is removed, the existing industry will correct on its own, with or without the stimulus. But I do believe that certain sectors of the economy, which are really badly affected, very small enterprises, tourism and hospitality, would definitely need stimulus from one point or the other.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, Dean, maybe this is a good time to bring you in, right? I mean, I think what's clear is that we need to revive the economy. We need to bolster economic growth. We need to find new frameworks and new paradigms through which we do it. But how do we think about this more broadly also, where we take into account environmental factors, where we try and promote green growth, green jobs? Maybe you could reflect a little bit on your experience with the Regional Planning Commission and, your professional experience as well. How do we think about this more holistically and systemically?
Yeah, I think it's really a great opportunity to, as Shekhar said, reboot what we've been doing and innovate. Sanjeev brought up the point of food. And, we're a state that receives one of the highest rainfall in India. We've got tremendous amount of fertile lands. We've got great forests. And I think we need to use these natural resources effectively. We also have a great amount of skill base. If you look at the doctor population, the teacher population ratio that we have in the state, we could be a great educational hub. We could be a great medical hub as well. So these resources definitely need to be tapped. Shekhar brought up the point of, tourism and mining, which have been really stretched to a point and which are really, disastrous from the social point of view, from the environmental point of view. So these two industries really need to be completely rethought. I mean, there was a recent proposal made by the minister saying that we need to make a high-end tourism. Unfortunately, Goa has become a mass, low-end tourism, which is for alcohol, sex, casinos. And that image is going to take a long time to wear off. So I think we need to look at a tourism that really is based on the local culture of the place, local sort of resources that we have. So if you look at places like Southeast Asia, they have a tourism which gets them involved in. So it's an adventure tourism that explores them to the local culture of the area. You have tourism that allows people to go to the fields, so like what they call agro-tripping. I've been to Costa Rica recently, and Costa Rica, which is almost like the scale of Goa, in a way, its ethos, its cultural background is also similar in nature, and its environment and is also very similar, right from coastal to hilly areas. And there they had very clear methodologies of going about their industry. They rely a lot on tourism as well, but they also looked at what the resources are. They have tremendous forests. And so one of the steps they took, Costa Rica initially made its money through IT actually. So it first became a manufacturing hub for Intel, and then eventually went into software. So it's a great software hub at the moment. And they trained the universities to actually be part of that system. So the industry really supported the universities actually grew it. So they didn't have to import people into the place to actually run their industry. They actually trained the industry extremely well to take over whatever sort of initiatives and investments that came from outside. They looked at biopharmacy. They have tremendous parts with the biodiversity that they have, which is very similar to what we have in Goa. We can tap into the biopharmacy industry, which is the big money spin. If you're looking at money coming into the state, and really, as Shekhar said again, the footprint per square meter of money and resources. So I think these are great possibilities. And at the same time, we're looking at a small scale level. We're looking at people now innovating, realizing that we have to use our resources. People are innovating and saying, before the monsoons, let's start some great water harvesting methods. Water is really the food for plants. So it has to really be harnessed. We've lost these traditional wisdoms that we had in the past. Water is gone great way. We need to retoil our soil to make sure that we produce as much more and not rely on states on the side. We have a lot of migrant labor, which is now going to lie idle from the collapse of tourism. We could definitely tap that labor to actually build our gardens again, build our sort of food resources again. So I think we need to look at innovative ways in which, all the downsides of what this pandemic has brought is actually look at it positively and bring these changes about it. If you want quick fixes, of course, if you look at things like mining, I mean, there's no point trying to really do that quick fix of mine again. There's 65,000 crores that's owing actually, which has been looted by, connivance between the government and mine owners. One simple step, if you don't want to do anything, just recover that 65,000. But that's, of course, long-term thing, it looks like. But I think we need to look at how can we innovate with what we have. Sadly, we've missed the IT bus. We could have actually, with a great knowledge of English and the education level that we have, we could have actually tapped this 20, 30 years ago. We've missed it. It still has little potential, which we can, but I think it's time to go back to basics and what do we rely on. I think we've all realized that just being at home, that we can go back to a much more simple level of living, make sure that our food comes from sources which are close by and safe. And again, local economies, like Sanjeev mentioned, that how do we actually make sure that the village is the unit of development? And I think when we worked on the regional plan, we realized that the village can be that economic unit of development where we actually create, it could be even a local barter system that we have, but bringing communities together to actually perform. We need to look at, a lot of states are looking at, okay, what do we do with migrant labor that's coming back to the village? But they're coming back with skills. In a similar way, we'll have a lot of people coming from the Gulf when they're coming back with skills. So can we tap those Gulf returnees, with their skills? They're coming back with industrial skills, with the economic skills, financial skills. So can we actually tap those skills of people who are returning to the state? And those who I hate the term migrants, it's very derogatory, but those people who are really now stuck in the state, who want to be in Goa, how do we actually, bring them into the system and imbibe the ethos that Goa has? I think that's extremely important. We need to look at organizations. I mean, if you look at organizations like CREDAI or the Chamber of Commerce, which look after developers, look after industry heads, but they're focused on the owners of the company. If you're looking at industry, you can't just look at what the benefit is to the owners of the company. You have to look at how it can benefit you right down to the worker. So you have to look at the lowest level of thing at the bottom of the pyramid. It's extremely essential that we look at this level if we have to rebuild society again. It brings me to one really interesting book, I think, which you must all read, is really, it's called The Machine Stops. It was written over 100 years ago by E.M. Foster. And it really talks about this collapse of the machine. And the machine is the way industry is running today. It's really this thing which is putting us on this treadmill where we are completely directed by whatever society or economic policies say. And the moment the machine collapses, we realize the reality of the world we live in. And it's time to actually, now since the machine is virtually collapsing, is get that spare time to understand what's happening. In that story, really, people go underground, they lock themselves up, and they suddenly realize after the machine stops that they have to go back into the real world. And the real world we can see now. So it's time to really look at the real world and how can we tap and use all the resources that we have. So this pandemic has really opened our eyes. Yes, it is catastrophic. It's really affecting a lot of people, which is really sad. But I think it gives us an opportunity that we must grab now.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Dean. You spoke a lot about innovations. Maybe, Jose, this is a good time to bring you in, and maybe what you could tell us a little bit about, what you think is the role of the State Innovation Council, right, in a situation like this. What are the ways in which the council or broadly new innovative ideas can help balance or can help us rebalance the kind of competing imperatives of growth and equity, right? Because they both need to go hand in hand, and in some sense, this is an opportunity to think of that relationship. So, Jose, any thoughts from you?
Yes, I think the opening, I'll just say that we are not technologically so advanced as we have believed that we were. If a virus like COVID could put us back, by years behind and shut down shops everywhere, we have not yet reached there. Now, having said that, and having heard Sanjeev and Dean and my friend Shekhar as well on the aspects, another issue that we have to understand about the India and Goa as entities, we are not yet reached that maturity level, where we are savvy with having patents or filing for new ideas. Now, a country like China, for example, they generate about 4 lakh odd patents every year. The US generates 3 lakhs. You have Japan, that generates about 2 lakhs. And India generates only 12,000. So, I mean, there is something that has to do with the way that we think, the way that the ideation process goes ahead. Do we not think deep enough to create a new product, a new process? Where is it that we're missing the bus? Now, having said all these things, the State Innovation Council in Goa, for example, we are there for the last maybe 5 or 6 years. We have helped to build an ecosystem in the state of Goa, where we have about 7 incubators as of today in various parts of Goa, including BITS and gyms. We have SIVA, we have Fire at Don Bosco, etc. And we have about 300 odd seats in these incubators. 200 startups have already come out of this incubation ecosystem. I know 200 of them are basically IT related, and 30 would be non-IT related. But what happens is that the startups by themselves may not be able to reboot, like Shekhar would say. Each startup that we have in Goa, if you see on an average, they generate about 20 or 25 employment for about 25 people. If we are looking to employ 100,000 people or 200,000 people, definitely startups in Goa may not be able to meet up to that expectation at this moment of time. If you have 200 startups and each of them, say, employ about 20 people, you have a very few thousand people who are going to be employed. Scaling up in Goa is a problem. For example, if I have a very good IT-related startup and he's come with a bright idea, he wants to scale up and he wants to employ 10,000 people. Today, perhaps you have 10,000 people available in the state of Goa who are IT educated, tech savvy, they know to speak good English, they understand things. But again, like Shekhar was saying, availability of land is a major issue. So where do they go to set shop? Industrial areas are mainly meant for smaller kind of companies that are already there. Industrial areas are saturated. Whether there is land available for new industries, especially of this volume where they can have 10,000 and 20,000 people, is a question mark. So then what do these startups, young startups do? In fact, a year back when I was pushing this startup to build the ecosystem, I used to tell all the youngsters from IITs or BITS to come to talk to us that, see, you can innovate in Goa, incubate in Goa, but perhaps if you want to scale up, you'll have to go out of Goa. That's what I used to always tell them, because of the land resource problem. But today, I think, if we are going to get back people from the Gulf, get people coming back to us from the UK, get people coming back to us from the US, our own children and whoever they are, maybe that idea can be revisited now. Yes, we have talent pool coming back, people who are tech savvy, who have been exposed to international working environments again. If they can come back here, set up shop, look at the startups that are here, maybe associate with them, then the scaling up process could be really taking place up here more easier, because obviously the government also today would have to take care of to see how they're going to employ this large number of people who are going to come back. It is every day that thousands of people would come back from the Gulf and all of them, like Dean rightly said, with skills. I'm not talking about skills at the word migrant level, but skills at a higher level. There's so many engineers, doctors will be back now. What do we do with them? So I think education hub 1, health and healthcare 2, startups in different type of areas like say IT-enabled services, or to do with marketing, to do with anything related to technology, perhaps would catch up. And having these youngsters of us who are coming back, like I said again, well exposed, well educated, who are aware that what is a startup. The government of Goa again has a facility where they give them grants, they give them loans, they give them a lot of facilities to make it easy for them to set up shop here. I think our kids can take advantage of all this situation, knowing jolly well that the situation of COVID will probably perhaps last for a year and a half. We don't know. Tourism, on the other hand, has taken a beating, and it will take a beating for quite some time to come because travel will be very difficult now. If tourists have to come to Goa, the same type of tourists that they're getting right now, not like what maybe Dean expects at higher end, they have to fly in here. They have to travel by train, by roads. How do they come? So the same workforce that perhaps was employed in our tourism sector would have to be redeployed, re-employed, re-skilled, perhaps something different. And these are just ideas that I'm throwing in right now from entrepreneurship point of view. From the startup, like what I said, healthcare, IT-enabled services would be what we should be looking at now in the next few months to come.
Thank you, Jose. I mean, just to share with our audience also, you are more than welcome and we encourage your questions. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to pose any questions to the panelists and we'll take them as they come in. Sanjit, so maybe back to you. I mean, so I think what comes out clearly from what everyone has been saying is that there is now an availability of high skilled labor in Goa, or very skilled labor in Goa that has come back from the Gulf, that has come back from other places. So how does that, I mean, so these people will have aspirations, they will want certain things. So how does that kind of marry with your model of local self-governance, local sustainability, etc., right? So how do we marry the aspirations of a global citizenry with the need for more local self-sufficiency? Is there a tension there? How do we make sure that we're able to accommodate aspirations within this self-sustainable model?
Yeah, I think it is very clear that not everyone can be a startup. Not everyone can go and have a jump on the growth gravy train. We need to have distribution and equity in what we do. So if there are people who are homecoming and it is not necessary that the skill is in terms of commerce, in terms of huge economic enterprise. Of course, there is enterprise existing in the state which will absorb some. There is enterprise which can be started. But the emphasis on a self-start at the local level is also part of this growth. So my point is, we have also noticed a lot of urban people going back to their roots, going back to their farm and actually working. There are examples. There are commitments which people are doing. A lot of reverse migration is happening from urban to rural. There is a lot of thought process in terms of innovation in agriculture, in terms of local enterprise, in terms of work from home, and these skill sets which can work remotely. So there are a lot of avenues. How to channelize them is the challenge. So how do we convince people? How do we sort of work on people's mind that this is what Goa requires, and there has to be a continuity of this thought. If there is a policy like Shekhar was saying, or if there is a startup idea which Mr. Norona was saying, this has to be a continuous process. There cannot be a break. So if a person comes, he knows that there is continuity. Today we suffer from some sort of uncertainty in this area. This uncertainty should go, and we should be very sure of where we want to go. So if a person comes back with a certain skill set, he has to read our roadmap. Where is the roadmap? Which is the roadmap? And the roadmap which will not take a bend or a turn or stop in between. This roadmap has to be clear. This is the time to define and debate and fix the roadmap and pin it on our wall. People will come, people will read the roadmap, and people will find their footing. This is for sure, because people coming with higher skill sets know what they're doing. If they want to go back to their roots and start on the agrarian side, or on work from home side, or on local enterprise side, which would not require huge investment but would require more of mentorship, then we should say that in our roadmap. I think ideas for Goa should work on this roadmap, and we should see that the roadmap is on our walls sooner or later. The more we delay it, the more we are confusing people who are returning, more we are confusing people who are here, and more uncertainty is being built. This roadmap has to come out as a result of ideation, and we have to work towards working on this roadmap. Otherwise, everyone moves in circles. Each one is working on their own ecosystem, and self-reliance, self-sustainability, and all other jargon which we use remain on paper and on chats like these.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Shekhar, I mean, I think a question back to you then, I think is, so I think we're hearing quite clearly that the tourism sector needs to be rethought, and we want to create a more self-sustaining and sustainable economic outlook for India. So what are the ways in which industry can diversify, or the new kind of areas which industry can go to? And is there a skill gap? Is there a skill match? Do we have the resources in terms of human resources, infrastructure, etc., to be able to enable new industries that are green, that are forward looking, to grow in Goa? Shekhar, you're on mute again.
Sorry.
Your best.
I do think that Goa being a small state, we do need a diversity for industry in terms of its spread. We do not want to be leveraged to just one industry. So we need small and medium enterprises, well diversified into various skill gaps. And I do believe also that, issues like skill gaps, issues like resources, issues like availability of manpower, these are the issues industry will resolve on their own, or industry will work with the stakeholders to resolve on their own. What we need, what the industry is today looking for, is policy stability and predictability. I think that is something that has been missing in Goa for a long, long time. We either we just go into hibernation. It's not that we really don't. I'll give you an example. Let's say 25 years back, when I started my enterprise, the environment in Goa in terms of how the entrepreneurs were encouraged was so very different. It was so very conducive. I never remember more than a few days that I needed to go to IDC or EDC to get my things done. There was almost a red carpet at that point in time, and this continued all the way from 1980s to until 2000. Things changed after that for some reason. Until 95, 96, when I started my industry, IDC gave me a land without me having to, do any kind of inducement to anybody. EDC gave me a loan for starting my business. And it was every license and everything came to me so fast. And when people used to complain all the time, this is happening, I said, this never happened during our time. So look at, the kind of entrepreneurs that Goa built during this time. Why are people not getting into entrepreneurship? Anybody who says, who wants to get there, in Konkani they say, why do I need to take the trouble of getting into entrepreneurship, employing so many people, when the policy itself creates roadblocks for me? So I think that is something that the political establishment should hear, that the industry need to be enabled. They do not need to give anything other than enablism mechanism to the industry. If the environment that existed pre-1995 can be recreated in Goa, I think if you map the industries that came to Goa during that time and their success stories, the same success can be repeated. Rest, everything is hardware that can be bought.
Right. Yeah. Dean, so over to you. I mean, I think we're seeing these stories from all over the world, like, Bombay, the birds are back, and there was a black Black Panther spotting in Goa recently, and I know that the lockdown has eased because the road from my house to Mapsa is now littered with garbage all over again, where that was not the case for the past 3 weeks. So that's been my marker of how the lockdown has been eased. So, so how do we think about kind of sustainable resource management going forward? What are the ways in which government, industry, civil society can come together to enable that and use that as a way to create employment, to create value generation for the communities?
Yeah, I think it's a good, point that you brought up, that we all need to come together. We all need to sit at the same table, because if you look at the issues of environmental degradation, if you look at the issues of development has become a bad word today, because it's not been in the best interest of the state at times. It's really sapped resources in the state, and therefore it's looked at as a bad way. So how can you look at development in a positive way? And I think Goa stands as a great model for the rest of India. It's small scale enough. The politicians are accessible. The bureaucracy, as Shekhar said, everything was fine before, but suddenly it's got, this influence from the bigger states, and the bureaucracy and the corruption, everything has seeped into the system. We need to tackle that urgently. We need to make it a far more transparent state, and a state that really has both natural and human resources that we can tap brilliantly. And I think the government, politicians, after all, they want their votes. So so long as we get them to say that they're doing a good job, we can direct it in the right direction. We can actually make sure that yes, you get your sort of brownie points, but let's do it properly. And I think it's because a lot of the games are just these iconic stuff of this whatever, this bridge, that bridge, something which in the public eye looks impressive, but we need small scale interventions to really make a big difference. And those small scale interventions can happen at village level. There's a lot that's needed at village level. So again, as I said before, we need these building blocks starting at village level and then going into, because unless you solve the problems at this rural level, you cannot do it at a much bigger level. And I think so it does need great investment. The moment you put big money into bigger projects, you don't realize the cost of actually maintaining that, repairing that, is also not taken on. So the government is broke at the moment. I mean, we're in debt to thousands of crores. We shouldn't be that way. We have fantastic resources. We need to be able to tap. I think it needs, complete think tank, sitting down, government, the people, industry, holding hands, said, okay, what's happened has happened. Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's solve this all together. And I think that's extremely important to do at the moment.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, what I'm hearing from all of you is also that, there's a need for kind of both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach really is about local empowerment, local self-reliance, but at the same time, you also need that policy-level stability. You need, without which it is much harder for people, for businesses, etc., to be able to plan, right? So you need both those coming together, and then obviously you need a confluence of various actors. We do have some questions that are coming in from the audience. So Jose, maybe I'll pose the first one to you, but if anyone else would like to jump in, just wave and you can step in as well. So the first question that we have is on what specific steps do we need to upgrade our infrastructure and to do it in a manner that safeguards the environment as well. So the example that has been cited is completing the North-South highway. So Jose, any thoughts on that, on how do we do infrastructure? How do we upgrade it? How do we do it in a way that's environmentally friendly?
Yes, I was in environment for 6 years. I chaired the State Pollution Board one time, the Environment Authority for one time. I think, invariably, whenever they have to do a project of this magnitude, they would have to have an environment clearance that is granted to them by the Ministry of Environment and Forests. Those would have had certain safeguards. I'm not privy to that information. But having said that, if they build bridges, they build roads across green virgin areas or fields or water bodies, they have to take adequate protection for that. Now, Goa, as from north to south, it may be about 100 odd kilometers that they have. They would probably have been cutting through fields and rivers and lakes, etc. Now, the project is at quite an advanced stage of completion at this moment. So they have to complete it now soon. Whatever they have done, the foundations have been laid. It has to get on and to complete it in such a way that, like Dean was saying, water harvesting, we are a state with excessive rainfall, almost 3,000 millimeters per year. So how do we take care of the water? How do we take care of the water bodies that we have, which is really this time. Then the other part is where do they dump the materials that that they excavate, where the hill cutting. If that can be done in a rational and more environment friendly manner, I think it is fine. But I don't have the information with me offhand right now as to where exactly the environmental hurdles are taking place for this north-south highway that's coming.
Right. Anyone else would like to jump in on that? Sustainable infrastructure. How do we build and upgrade sustainable infrastructure?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at infrastructure, I mean, a lot of people look at infrastructure from the point of view of, you know, the built infrastructure of, buildings, roads, industry, and things like that. But there's an infrastructure that really gives us our water, gives us our food, gives us our oxygen, sequesters our carbon dioxide. So that's an infrastructure is not taken into account. And I think, in Goa, we have a lot of that. We need to ensure that that is protected. We need to be able to showcase this and actually show it to other areas which are becoming urban, that if you are becoming urban, make sure that that green infrastructure that you need, of places where you get your water from, your energy from, your food from, your oxygen from, is preserved. So it's extremely important that we look at the environment. People think of the environment as a hurdle in terms of industry. But I think long term, the environment is your bank, is your economic bank. The moment you tap and destroy your natural resources, you're destroying your resources which are meant for your industry eventually. So I think the short-sightedness of creating industry which is destroying environment is bad. We need to look at industry that's green, that's positive, that contributes to the state in a way. I mean, Goa has policies to create, industries which are green, and in the next, I think they call it the orange zone or something. But I think a lot more needs to be done. We need to be a lot more careful about the industries that we develop in the state. And as I said, we can be this model state to follow. And with this pandemic has really taught us that people are returning from urban areas to rural areas. Cities are failing. They're failing for just one simple pandemic. So there's going to be tremendous pressure on tier 2, tier 3 cities. So these cities need to imbibe these basic principles the good things that we learn from rural areas. Yes, there is a certain benefit of urbanization. There's a certain density which makes it efficient. But at the same time, you need to leave that green infrastructure in place.
Yeah, definitely. Sanjeet, we have one question for you. I saw you indicating to someone else you have to go and fight, that you'll be 5-10 minutes more. So we'll pose the question to you first. So the question from the audience is that if Panjim was supposed to have public bike sharing to lower the vehicle footprint, and whether there's any plans of reviving this in Panjim.
Plans are there, but there is a hierarchy in public transportation. And I would really like to see a light bus rapid system for Panjim first, because our internal transportation leaves much to be desired. It takes the bus as long to commute from the bus stand to Miramar as much as it takes from Panjim bus stand to Margao. Yeah. We cannot operate like this. I think a bus transit system is very much essential. That's first on the hierarchy. A bike share system definitely has to be there. For that, we have to have less traffic with this bus transport system coming in. And point two is then the bike is used as last mile connectivity, and it is more used. We just cannot reverse the order and have a bike system and have lots of cars and no transit. We're working hard. There are issues on that, and now finance could be one issue. But a good light bus transit system for Panjim is doable, workable, financially can be worked upon. And if the bus runs on eco-fuel or biofuel or biogas, that would be cherry on the cake.
And any plans to kind of rethink or develop further the kind of transport system across Goa? Because if we're talking about local produce and local self-sufficiency, then access to markets within Goa will become increasingly important. So any plans for linking up parts of Goa better or in other ways? You're on mute, Sanjeet.
You mean in terms of enterprise linkage, in terms of enterprise?
No, in terms of transport.
Oh,
I mean, would there be any kind of, I don't know, metro linking, rail linking, alternative ways of thinking about this? So you're
uh,
integrating various local
I don't
economies.
have anything on my plate. I cannot. There may be plans, but I think Goa is too small for such a large idea of a metro or such. But since we are having a north-south four-lane highway, I think for the time being that would serve Goa well. But
Right.
bus transit for Goa is, I think, required. Our transport situation is not is pathetic. I think we have to scale up. Just having good roads and having lots of cars makes no sense. We'll have a good road, but we should have a good rapid system. Only then will our cars reduce and people feel the ease of transportation and the ease of working.
Sure. So we have just a few minutes left before we wrap up. So maybe just one last round where if you could each share with us your kind of top idea for a post-COVID Goa. Jose, maybe we can start with you and we'll work backwards through the panel.
Yeah, just to add, we, at the Innovation Council, we have a website which has got something known as a virtual innovation register, where all the youngsters over the last year or so have been uploading new ideas that they have. Now, this program that we have is also to do with idea generation. Just a tip to the people who are ideating, who are thinking about new processes, new ways of getting our Goa rebooted, is think of something practical, think of something grassroots. How can the idea that you propose help the poorest man? Because today, the person who's been affected the most, remember, is the poor man. If we can do something to the guy to get him to rework his life, get him to work again, get his income coming back again, I think that's the better idea that we can produce. And it's very doable because people are waiting to get kind of a daily wage coming their way.
I think uh, I think Mr. Narona has hit the nail on its head. I second it.
Would a basic income support be one of those kind of ways of helping the most affected by the crisis?
The universal income we're talking about, or which one?
Yeah, providing some kind of UBI, would that be an option at a state level?
No, I think they have to be occupied. I think we have to find them an occupation and an income, not only the income.
But as the short term.
Perhaps, yes, because that's already being done by certain people. They're providing the basic necessities that's being done. But I think occupation, just keeping somebody idle and giving his necessities is not the right way forward. He has to be occupied. Socially, otherwise that would be a distraction, and probably it would even destroy the social balance in the state.
Okay. Dean, your one idea for top idea for post-COVID?
I think it's influenced by the fact that I'm an architect, but I really think a community center for every village, a center which actually acts as a platform for all the people. As Jose said, for the bottom of society, really, the economic bottom of society, they need that support. We see so many fields being filled in by people building things illegally in the field, little kiosks to sell food or whatever, but they're doing it out of the fact that buying anything in a settlement area is difficult. So if we can create this little platform for people for little sort of food stall areas, where they have all the services in place. The community center is multi-purposes. It could be used for education. It could be used for healthcare. It could be used for economic and skill development of the area. But just this one little building can actually make a big difference to the economics of a village and support the lowest end of things. Because there's so much that's being produced in villages. So the women who make pickles and jams and or have produce in their fields and they don't have a platform to sell it from. We can actually use this community center to bring people together and offer them support. And I think that would be my pet idea.
It would be quite interesting to also see if one could scale that up to also a kind of digital platform that then connects community centers across the state. I mean, there's a lot of interesting experiments around the world on these kind of cooperative digital platforms. So we all know the bad stories about Uber and Ola and Uber, etc. But the technology in itself does allow various players in a marketplace to connect with each other. So maybe one can have a kind of Goa-based platform that then connects these community centers, and then you create a local ecosystem because you're able to match kind of demand and supply. Yeah. Shekhar, over to you. Last word. What is your top idea?
So I think I'm not going to invent an idea. All I'm going to say is that we have two premier institutions in Goa which were created for Goa's industrial and economic development. One is Goa Industrial Development Corporation, and I repeat, it is Goa Industrial Development Corporation. And one is Goa Economic Development Corporation. I repeat, it is Goa Economic Development Corporation. Unfortunately, over the years, they have lost the reason why they have created. One has become a landlord, and the other has become a lender. If these two institutions can really rediscover their origins, and the third enabling policy document is the Goa Investment and Policy, which is really a well thought of policy. If these three institutions, Goa Investment Promotion Board, IDC, and EDC, can work in tandem and really focus on what is required for Goa in terms of what is defined in the policy, enable that mechanism, I don't think we need anything more.
Great, thank you. Well, we're unfortunately out of time. I mean, I think we're only just scratching the surface, and there's so much more to kind of unpack and unpick. But I just want to thank you all for sharing your ideas and your time with us. This is obviously the first of many, many conversations. There's two more webinars coming up very soon. One on local food systems, that is on Monday, May 11th, and then another one on tourism and hospitality on May 12th. So I think the idea with this webinar was really to have a kind of broad-based discussion, throw some ideas out there, and with subsequent webinars would be to kind of zoom into particular industries, particular sectors, and kind of work out or start thinking about what the details would be, right? Like kind of unpack how we could take some of the ideas to implementation. So thank you all very, very much. And thank you to the Ideas for Goa team for organizing this webinar. I encourage everyone in the audience to please go back to go to the Ideas for Goa website, vote for your favorite idea, propose new ideas. And I think just the fact to have such an enormous amount of community participation in Goa is already a huge sign and a huge marker of good things to come. So hopefully we can keep that going. So thank you all very much, and take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.